There is a quiet truth most people are afraid to face. You cannot force someone to miss you. The more you chase, the more you try to prove your worth, the more invisible you become in their emotional world. Absence does not create longing by itself. Meaningful absence does. When you are always available, always replying, always emotionally present, you unknowingly remove the space required for desire to breathe. Familiarity without depth becomes background noise, and no one longs for what feels constantly accessible. The shift begins the moment you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself, when your energy is no longer centered on him, when your time, your attention, and your emotional investment are redirected toward your own growth. Something subtle but powerful happens. You become unpredictable, not in behavior, but in presence. You are no longer easy to read, easy to reach, or easy to define, and that mystery creates curiosity. Curiosity leads to attention. Attention leads to emotional recall. And emotional recall is where missing begins. But understand this, it's not about playing games or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about reclaiming your emotional independence. When your happiness is no longer dependent on his reactions, your presence gains weight. Because now when you show up, it's a choice, not a need. Men don't miss constant reassurance. They miss emotional impact. Think about it. People remember how you made them feel, not how often you were there. If your presence felt grounding, exciting, or rare, your absence will echo louder than any message you could send. So instead of asking, why doesn't he miss me? Ask a different question. Have I given him something to miss? Or have I given him everything already? When you stop overgiving, when you stop explaining your worth, when you create boundaries that protect your energy, you introduce something powerful into the connection, contrast. And contrast is what creates emotional awareness. Suddenly your silence is noticed, your absence is felt, your energy is remembered. But here is the deeper truth most avoid. If he still doesn't miss you, even after you've reclaimed your value, your space, your self-respect, then it is not your absence that is lacking. It is his emotional capacity. And no amount of effort can make someone feel what they are not ready to feel. Your power was never in making him miss you. Your power is in becoming someone unforgettable, whether he realizes it or not. Because when you truly embody that, the right ones don't need distance to recognize your value. They feel it instantly. Absence on its own is empty. It does not automatically create longing, nor does it guarantee that someone will suddenly realize your value. What gives absence its power is the emotional experience that existed before it. If your presence was ordinary, predictable, or taken for granted, then your absence simply feels like silence. But when your presence carried depth, when it made someone feel seen, understood, or emotionally moved, your absence becomes noticeable in a way that lingers. People don't miss availability, they miss impact. If every interaction feels the same, if there is no emotional imprint left behind, then distance changes nothing. It is not the physical or digital space between two people that creates desire, but the memory of what that space used to hold. When someone associates you with a feeling they cannot easily recreate elsewhere, your absence gains weight. It becomes something they measure, something they compare, something they quietly return to in their thoughts. Meaningful absence is not about disappearing to provoke a reaction. It is about having a presence that was valuable enough to be felt when it's gone. This is why trying to pull away as a tactic often fails. If the connection lacked emotional depth, then pulling away only accelerates disinterest. But when there was genuine connection, authenticity, and emotional resonance, distance naturally amplifies it. The mind begins to revisit conversations, moments, and emotions, trying to understand why something now feels missing. There is also a difference between absence that feels intentional and absence that feels empty. When someone senses that you have a life, priorities, and emotional independence beyond them, your absence carries a sense of quiet strength. It suggests that your presence was a choice, not a dependency. That distinction matters because people value what is chosen more than what is constantly given without condition. Meaning, then, is created through how you show up when you are present. It is built through genuine connection, emotional awareness, and the ability to leave someone feeling something real. Without that, absence is just distance. With it, absence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the emotional experience that once existed and making its absence impossible to ignore. Over-availability often feels like effort, like care, like doing everything right, but emotionally it can have the opposite effect. When you are always there, always responding instantly, always ready to give your time and attention, you remove the natural tension that creates anticipation. There is no space left for curiosity to grow, no gap for someone to wonder about you, no moment where they feel the absence of your presence. Everything becomes immediate, predictable, and expected. Desire is not built on constant access. It is built in the space between interactions. When something is always within reach, the mind stops assigning it value because it no longer feels like something that could be lost. This is not about playing games or deliberately withholding care, but about understanding that emotional energy needs rhythm. Without pauses, without moments of unavailability, the connection loses its emotional contrast. It becomes flat, like a song played on a single note. When you are over-available, you also unintentionally signal that your time is not scarce. You rearrange your priorities, you make yourself convenient, and in doing so, you teach the other person that they don't need to invest much to keep your attention. Human nature responds to value, and value is often tied to what feels limited, intentional, and chosen. If your presence feels automatic, it stops feeling special. There is also a deeper layer to over-availability. It often comes from a desire to be liked, chosen, or validated. You give more, respond faster, and stay present longer in hopes that it will create closeness. But real connection doesn't grow from constant giving. It grows from mutual investment. When one person is always filling the space, the other never feels the need to step forward. The balance quietly disappears. Pulling back is not about creating distance for the sake of it, but about restoring that balance. It allows the other person to experience what it feels like when you are not immediately there. It gives them the opportunity to reach out, to initiate, to feel the shift in your absence. And in that space, desire has room to form, not because you forced it, but because it finally had somewhere to exist. When your presence is no longer constant, it becomes intentional. And what is intentional carries more emotional weight than what is endlessly available. Emotional independence carries a quiet kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. It is not about detachment or indifference, but about being grounded in your own sense of self without relying on someone else to stabilize your emotions. When you are emotionally independent, your mood, your confidence, and your sense of worth are not dictated by how often someone texts you, how they respond, or whether they choose you in a given moment. That stability creates a presence that feels calm, self-assured, and unexpectedly compelling. People are naturally drawn to those who do not seek constant validation because it signals strength and wholeness. When you are not trying to extract reassurance from someone, your interactions feel lighter, more genuine, and free of pressure. There is no hidden urgency behind your words, no silent expectation that they must behave a certain way to keep you at ease. This absence of pressure allows the other person to experience you without feeling responsible for your emotional state, and that freedom often draws them closer rather than pushing them away. Emotional independence also changes the way you give. Instead of offering attention out of need or fear of losing someone, you offer it from a place of choice. That difference is subtle but powerful. When your presence is a choice, it feels intentional, and intention carries weight. It tells the other person that you are there because you want to be, not because you feel incomplete without them. This creates a dynamic where your attention feels earned rather than assumed. There is also an element of unpredictability that comes with emotional independence, not in a chaotic or confusing way, but in the sense that your life does not revolve around one person. You have your own priorities, your own interests, and your own direction. This makes your presence feel like one part of a larger, fuller life, which naturally sparks curiosity. People begin to wonder about you, to notice when you are present, and to feel the difference when you are not. Most importantly, emotional independence protects your energy. It allows you to engage without losing yourself, to care without becoming consumed, and to step back without feeling like you are losing everything. That balance creates a sense of inner stability that others can feel, even if they cannot explain it. And that feeling of being around someone who is complete within themselves is what makes emotional independence deeply magnetic. Mystery is not about hiding who you are or pretending to be distant. It is about allowing space for discovery instead of revealing everything at once. When every thought, feeling, and detail is immediately shared, there is little left for the other person to explore. The human mind is naturally drawn to what it cannot fully grasp, to what unfolds gradually rather than all at once. Curiosity begins where certainty ends, and when someone feels like they already know everything about you, that curiosity quietly fades. When you hold back just enough, not in a guarded or defensive way, but in a grounded and intentional way, you create layers. Each interaction becomes an experience of uncovering something new, something not immediately obvious. This doesn't mean being vague or confusing. It means allowing your personality, your thoughts, and your emotions to reveal themselves over time. That pacing gives the other person a reason to stay engaged, to ask questions, to think about you even when you're not around. Predictability often feels safe, but it rarely feels exciting. When your behavior, responses, and availability are always the same, the interaction becomes easy to anticipate. There is no sense of wonder, no moment where someone pauses and thinks, "What is she thinking?" or "What will she do next?" Mystery introduces that pause. It creates a subtle tension, a mental space where curiosity can grow, and curiosity is what keeps attention alive. There is also a difference between being emotionally open and being emotionally immediate. You can be authentic without being fully exposed from the beginning. Sharing everything too quickly can overwhelm the natural rhythm of connection, skipping the stages where interest and intrigue develop. When you allow things to unfold, you give the other person time to process, to invest, and to feel their own curiosity deepen. Mystery also reflects self-containment. It shows that you are not seeking to be fully understood in a single moment, that you are comfortable being known over time rather than all at once. This kind of presence feels calm and confident because it is not trying to prove itself. Instead, it invites discovery. In that invitation, curiosity begins to form naturally. The other person starts to fill in the spaces, to think about you in your absence, to revisit conversations and moments. And it is in those quiet moments of wondering that your presence extends beyond the interaction itself, becoming something they return to again and again. People rarely miss the effort itself. They miss the way that effort made them feel. You can give your time, your attention, your consistency, and still not create something that lingers in someone's mind. Effort, when it becomes routine or expected, fades into the background. It turns into something unnoticed, something assumed. But feelings, those moments of emotional impact, leave an imprint that doesn't disappear as easily. It is possible to do everything right on the surface and still not be missed, because connection is not measured by how much you give, but by how deeply you are felt. A long conversation is not memorable simply because it lasted hours. It is memorable because of what was experienced within it. A simple moment can stay with someone far longer than repeated acts of availability if it made them feel understood, appreciated, or emotionally stirred in a way they didn't expect. When effort becomes excessive, it can even lose its meaning. If you are always the one reaching out, always the one trying to maintain the connection, your actions can start to feel predictable. The other person doesn't have to wonder about you because you are always there. There is no emotional gap, no pause where your absence can be felt. Without that contrast, even genuine care can start to feel ordinary. Feelings, on the other hand, create memory. They give moments a certain weight, a kind of emotional signature that the mind returns to. When someone recalls you, they are not replaying every message or every act of effort. They are remembering how they felt in your presence. Did they feel at ease? Did they feel seen? Did they feel a sense of excitement or calm that they don't easily find elsewhere? Those are the things that echo after you're gone. This is why trying harder is not always the answer. More effort does not automatically translate into more value. In fact, when effort is constant and unbalanced, it can reduce the emotional impact of your presence. What matters is not how often you show up, but how you show up. The quality of the interaction, the authenticity of your energy, and the emotional resonance you create will always outweigh the quantity of what you give. When your presence creates a feeling that is rare, genuine, and difficult to replace, your absence becomes noticeable, not because of what you did, but because of what they experienced with you, and what they can no longer feel in the same way once you're gone. When someone doesn't miss you, the instinct is to turn inward and question your worth. You begin to wonder if you weren't interesting enough, attractive enough, or meaningful enough to leave an impression. But the truth is often far less personal than it feels. A person's ability to miss someone is deeply connected to their emotional depth, their self-awareness, and their readiness to form genuine attachments. If those qualities are limited, then their response to your absence will be limited as well. Not everyone processes connection in the same way. Some people avoid emotional depth because it makes them uncomfortable. Others are so distracted, guarded, or disconnected from their own feelings that they rarely pause long enough to reflect on what or who is missing from their life. In those cases, your absence doesn't create longing, not because you lacked value, but because they lack the internal space to feel it. You cannot expect someone to experience an emotion they are not equipped or willing to access. There is also a tendency to equate being missed with being important. It feels like proof that you mattered, but importance is not always reflected in immediate emotional reactions. Some people suppress their feelings, some replace connections quickly, and others simply move through life without deep reflection. Their lack of visible longing is not a reliable measure of your impact. It is a reflection of how they relate to emotions themselves. When you internalize their indifference, you place your self-worth in the hands of someone whose emotional capacity may be limited. That creates a cycle where you try harder, give more, and adjust yourself in hopes of triggering a response that may never come. But no amount of effort can compensate for a lack of emotional availability on their side. You cannot create depth in someone who avoids it, nor can you make them recognize something they are not ready to value. Understanding this shifts your focus. Instead of asking why you are not missed, you begin to see the situation more clearly. Your presence may have been meaningful, your energy genuine, your impact real, but it met someone who could not fully receive it. And when that happens, the absence of their longing is not a statement about your worth. It is simply a reflection of their limitations, not your lack. In the end, this was never about making someone miss you. It was about remembering who you are when you stop trying to be unforgettable in someone else's eyes. Because the moment you return to yourself, your peace, your standards, your sense of worth, you stop chasing reactions and start embodying value. And when you truly understand that, something shifts. You no longer measure your importance by who comes back, who reaches out, or who finally realizes what they lost. You measure it by how deeply you respect your own time, your own energy, and your own presence. Because the truth is simple. Even if it's hard to accept, the right person doesn't need distance to feel your absence. They recognize your value while you are still there. They don't wait to lose you to understand you. So let go of the need to be missed. Let go of the need to prove. Let go of the idea that your worth is something to be discovered after you're gone. Instead, become someone whose presence is enough, clear, grounded, and undeniable. And if someone fails to see that, let them go. Not to make them miss you, but because you finally remembered. You deserve to be chosen without disappearing first.